Okay, so the last project that I'm going to talk about is the Disciplinary Literacies Project, which was the last writing project that we had for this semester. And this project, you were supposed to pick a discipline or the discipline that you're going into, what you're majoring or something like that, and pick a topic or issue within that discipline to focus your sources on for this project, because it was rhetorical analysis where you're evaluating how different people within the field write and how people write for outsiders, how someone in the field writes for an outsider, or how other people write outside the field for other people to learn about this certain issue that you've chosen. And so I chose to write about my major in nursing because I thought it would be easier to write about it because it's something that's interesting to me and something that I actually want to go into the future. And I chose the topic of writing about the nursing shortage, which was actually a fun topic to learn about because I got to learn more things about hospitals and how hospitals work and how nurses work. And then too, what was interesting about this was when we started to get into this project was when schools and universities actually got shut down and we were all sent home because of COVID-19. So while writing this project, I actually got to see firsthand on the news and listen to nurses themselves talk about how hospitals are just being bombarded with sick patients and how they don't have enough nurses to handle the number of patients that they have, and how nurses are working overtime and risking their lives to actually save people. And so that was a really interesting point when writing this paper, because I got to see how the nursing shortage actually is in the US and around the world, because COVID was spreading throughout the whole world. But throughout this paper, I was actually kind of scared as to how I was going to get my sources and everything like that. But with the resources that Professor McKinnon provided with us, it was actually fun to find certain sources on the topic. And then my favorite part of this paper was not only reading the sources and what they have to say about the nursing shortage, and I also include other sources as to how people are trying to curb the nursing shortage and things hospitals can do to fix it or to at least help with it. But I really liked analyzing how different people write within the field, and with my sources for people within the field, like my trade publication article or other scholarly articles like that, it was really interesting to see the different vocab they use and how they talk differently within the writing, how it's structured in a more specific way, as to how when I look at how a nurse wrote an article in the New York Times for outsiders about what she deals with day to day, she used a lot of imagery and a lot of personal stories to actually show people how real this problem is. And she used actually at the end of her article, she kind of put the reader into a patient's shoes and said, what would you do if you were in a situation where you needed help and there wasn't a nurse to get to you in time, and then that was it? And so that became really real because she used more imagery to actually show outsiders how big this issue is and how it's not the nurse's fault when they're understaffed and things like that. And then it was also interesting to see how an outsider wrote for other people about the nursing shortage, and she used a lot of just different facts that she probably found about the nursing shortage, and she talked about how she talked to other nurses in the field about how they deal with it and how prevalent it actually is. But this was really interesting to see how different people talk when you're in the field versus when you're outside of the field versus when you're in the field trying to get other people to understand it. And to see the different ways that they write was actually quite scary, because you see, wanting to go into the nursing field, I knew that I would have to learn how to write how a nurse would actually write to another patient, another person in the medical field or something like that. But then also how I would maybe write an article one day about the nursing field to others and stuff like that. So I think the analyzation process of this paper was my favorite part of the paper, because I got to show like the different ways that they wrote. And this paper was fun to write because I never really explored issues within the nursing field, because when you're going into major, you're so excited about what this possibly could be. But then writing this paper really gave me insight as to how much work being a nurse actually is and how much you do sacrifice to being a nurse. But I think that's one of the big things about nursing is you sacrifice a lot because you want to help other people. And so this paper was really interesting to write, and I actually had a lot of fun with this one too, once I actually got into the paper and figured out how to write all of it. But yeah. Okay, so next video, I'm actually going to talk about my actual writing process. And the writing process that I actually found was really helpful for me, which I used on all of my papers throughout the semester, was the writing process that Professor McKinnon actually took us through for our first 2 papers in class, and then helped us online to do throughout our 3rd paper, the Disciplinary Literacies Project at Home. But the first step of the writing process was to brainstorm ideas about topics that you could write about and topics that would fit the guidelines for the paper. And this was really helpful because rather than picking your idea right off the bat, you could explore other things that you could write about and try and find the idea or the thing that fit best in the paper that you thought would work best with the paper. And then the second portion, or the second thing that we would do in our writing, or that I would do in my writing process, was Professor McKinnon would have us write, pick a topic and write just like a short, brief essay on that, just like a little excerpt about a certain aspect that could be included in the paper. And I found this really helpful because a lot of times when I would do this, I would pick like an idea, maybe not my favorite idea for the topic, but I would pick another idea, like maybe my second or third favorite idea, and I'd try to write about it and see if that was a better fit than the idea I had in my head. And I found this really helpful because then I could kind of use like process of elimination during this part and like eliminate the ideas that I came up with that I knew probably would not fit best in this, and then to explore probably like my top 2 or 3 ideas and how those would work within my paper and what I could actually write about, and making sure I have enough to say in the paper, not only to reach the guidelines of the paper, but to find the paper like most useful. And then the third like step that I usually would take in my writing process was, after that initial brainstorm and then the writing about a certain topic, just a little excerpt of it, is the third step would always be me finalizing what I wanted to write about and really like narrowing in on my topic and not having kind of like a broad topic, really having a specific topic that I could kind of open up within my paper about, but having that clear main idea to write about. And then the fourth thing this was probably the most helpful thing that I would do in the pre-writing stages of the process, was to kind of write like an outline of your paper. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like a paragraph to paragraph outline of the paper, but to answer certain questions about the paper that you were going to include. And a lot of times Professor McKinnon would give us a lot of questions that we could answer about the paper. And I found this super, super, super helpful in my writing process, because a lot of the answers to my questions were things that could help me write like in the drafting process, in actually writing my paper. And so when I would answer my outline, whether it be like an actual outline or it be questions, which personally for me, I felt like questions were a lot more useful in my pre-writing process. I would answer these questions really in depth so I could get a lot of my ideas out in the pre-writing process, and then in the drafting process, I could eliminate these ideas whether I included them or not. So if I didn't include them, I would leave them out and make sure like I would X them off my outline to make sure I wasn't including them. And then the fifth step would actually be the drafting process, so writing your paper. So one of my main goals for this semester was to split my writing process over multiple days, and this was a lot easier when I was on campus, because every Tuesdays and Thursdays, Professor McKinnon would give us topics to do, whether it be in the pre-writing stages, invention, or doing our outline, or writing about a certain topic that we had come up with. That made the drafting process a lot easier. So once I got to that drafting process and I had my topic pick, I would take the actual writing process day by day. So each day I would try to write a paragraph or two. If I was really feeling like I was on like a good move with my paper, I could do 3 paragraphs in a day. But I tried to really split up my writing over multiple days, so I wasn't like running out of things to write about, running out of ideas to include in my paper, and really focusing on certain paragraphs day by day so I could make them the best that they could be initially, and then enhance them when I go to the editing process. So that was kind of the big thing that I got to the drafting process, is I would focus on a couple paragraphs a day. And when I would write those paragraphs, since it was just the drafting process and it was not the final, I would write about everything that came to mind. Granted, still trying to keep my main point clear within those. I would try to get everything that I would want to say out on paper and just write it and then leave it. And then once I finally got the whole draft done was when I start the revision process.